The Champion Chip, Chapter 39, entitled Cantennas, Spud Guns, and Dresses Made of Foil. Not all the science fair projects made use of potato chips, but the ones that didn't, the baking soda volcano, Lumpkin's contribution to the study of the natural world, the tinfoil solar system, the kidney bean plantings born inside baggies, received a lot less attention than the exhibits that incorporated thin-sliced, deep-fried tubers. "What you got for us, Thomas?" Mr. Sparks asked, eyeing the second bedsheet-covered exhibit. "Well," said Thomas Warchowski, "I decided to investigate the science of resonance. That's the study of sympathetic vibrations." "Could you put that more simply, Thomas?" asked Principal Birdwhistle. "Sure thing. I built an antenna to extend the wireless signal on my mom's laptop. Antennas can cost more than $100 at the store, but by using stuff I found around the house, I made my Cantenna for $6.45. "What a clever boy," said Mrs. Breed. "Not bad," said Lumpkin Sr. "Now that's more like it," said Dr. Parmigiano. "A science project that is practical, economical, and wholesome." Thomas Warchowski's parents looked on proudly as sympathetic vibrations of a non-acoustical variety spread throughout the gym. "Excuse me, Thomas," said Principal Birdwhistle. "Did I hear you correctly? Did you say cantenna?" "Yep." "What is the difference between an antenna and a cantenna?" asked Dr. Parmigiano. "Well," said Thomas Warchowski, "let me show you." He whipped off the bedsheet to reveal his homemade frequency extender. "You gotta be kidding me," exclaimed Lumpkin Sr. "More potato chips." "No," said Thomas Warchowski, "I didn't use potato chips. I used a potato chip can." "Who's responsible for this?" Dr. Parmigiano demanded angrily. "Thomas is," said Mr. Sparks. "And if you pipe down, we might all find out how his invention works," said the short, round man with the briefcase. The rebuke silenced the dentist. "Thanks," said Thomas Warchowski. He returned his attention to the exhibit. "As we learned from Mr. Sparks, metal is an excellent conductor. If you look closely at this chip can cross-section, you'll see the metal coating on the inside of the tube wall. That coating touches the metal on the bottom of the can and forms a super effective reflector. Using a few lock nuts, 6 inches of aluminum tubing, some copper wire, and a bunch of other stuff, including a potato chip can, I was able to build a cantenna that hooks up to the wireless port of any computer. When properly adjusted," Thomas Warchowski fiddled with the position of the can, "my cantenna can extend the range of a wireless frequency by more than 500 feet. "What does that mean in practical terms, Thomas?" Mr. Sparks asked. "It means that if I point my cantenna just the right way, I can link this laptop to the school's internal computer network." "You had better not," Principal Birdwhistle said firmly. "I think we've seen enough." "Very elegant, Thomas," said Mr. Sparks. "Truly first rate." "Florence Pontevecchio Parmigiano, how could you?" A parental outburst drew attention to the adjacent table. "I'm just trying to be scientific, Dad," Flossie Parmigiano told her father, who was shaking his finger angrily at a poster that said, "Potato chips and tooth decay, myths and facts." "You want facts, young lady?" sputtered Dr. Parmigiano. "Fact. Potato chips are carbohydrates. Fact. Carbohydrates stick to teeth. Fact. Food particles rot teeth. Fact. Tooth decay is the most widespread non-contagious disease in the whole entire world." "Sorry, Dad, but that's not exactly true. Check out my research." Flossie Parmigiano pulled a Trimore Towers bedsheet off her exhibit and grabbed a big white plastic tooth wearing eyeglasses. "Let's hear what Mr. Moeller, the wisdom tooth, has to say, Dad." "Fact. Potato chips are a non-sweet carbohydrate. Fact. Non-sweet carbohydrates do not produce fermented sugars. Fact, fermented sugars are the real dental time bombs, the #1 cause of tooth decay. Dr. Parmigiano's brow furrowed. He was clearly taken aback by his daughter's counter-argument. "Where's your proof?" he challenged. "Right here," said Flossie Parmigiano. She put down Mr. Moeller and picked up 2 jars. One was labeled "Tooth in Soda" after 2 weeks. The other said "Tooth in Potato Chip Solution" after 2 weeks. "Where'd you get the teeth?" asked Dr. Parmigiano. "Where do you think?" his daughter answered, smiling broadly to reveal 2 gaps in an otherwise perfect set of choppers. Dr. Parmigiano inspected the jars. The one filled with soda contained a tooth eroded beyond recognition. "Looks like an olive pit," Maria remarked. As for the jar filled with the potato chip solution, its tooth appeared to be perfectly intact. "I must admit," said Dr. Parmigiano, "Mr. Moeller the wisdom tooth does make a pretty convincing case." Pleased by the turnaround, Mr. Sparks moved the group to the next table, where a formless shape was rustling underneath a Trimore Towers bedsheet. He bent over and whispered, "Lily Matisse, is that you under there?" "Yes." "Mind telling us what your project is?" "I decided to study the benefits of recycling," came the muffled reply. "How admirable," said Mr. Sparks. "But, Lily Matisse, we're all waiting to view your exhibit, so ollie ollie oxen free." "Actually," said Lily Matisse, "I'd like Principal Birdwhistle to unveil me." The principal reluctantly grabbed a corner of the bedsheet and gave a yank. "Oh my goodness!" she exclaimed. "Chip, chip, hooray!" cheered Emma Zeisel. "Wow!" said Mr. Sparks. "Oh, brother," said Lumpkin Sr. Lily Matisse stood up on the table and spun around with gymnastic grace before hopping down. "She made everything herself," said Regina Jaspro. "Not completely, Mom," Lily Matisse corrected her. "You showed me how to do the straps." "True," said Regina Jaspro, "but you wove them on your own." "That's the first time I've ever seen a student wear a science exhibit," said Principal Birdwhistle. "It makes me hungry just looking at her," said Frau Haffenreffer. Lily Matisse was dressed head to toe in clothing made from recycled potato chip bags. She wore a foil dress and foil slippers and clutched a foil purse. Mrs. Breed approached to scrutinize Lily Matisse more closely. "Your use of mylar is simply divine, and that purse, it's absolutely darling." "Is it possible," said Emma Zeisel, "that these exhibits are chipping away at your objections?" "Perhaps," said Mrs. Breed. "I didn't make all this stuff to be divine or darling," said Lily Matisse. "I did it to make a point about recycling. Guess how many dresses we could produce with all the tossed away potato chip bags?" No one ventured a guess. "Try 50 million, said Lily Matisse. "1 billion potato chip bags are trashed every year, and it only took me 20 bags to make this dress." 1 billion divided by 20 is 50 million, Mr. Sparks explained for the less mathematical parents. "You could dress every woman in Haiti," said Napoleon. "Plus every senorita in Peru," said Maria. "And all the Frauleins in Austria," added Frau Haffenreffer. "Hey, Mr. Sparks! Principal Birdwhistle!" PW shouted. "Want to see an exhibit that'll really blow you away?" "Oh, help us," mumbled Principal Birdwhistle as she led the way. "I'm afraid to ask," she said, gazing down at the next bedsheet. "No reason to be afraid," PW said cheerfully. He uncovered a wooden board on which he had mounted an apparatus fashioned from potato chip cans, black electrical tape, and white plastic plumbing pipe. "What in the world is that?" asked Principal Birdwhistle. "This," said PW, "is the crown prince of potato propulsion systems." "A Spud gun!" exclaimed Lumpkin Sr., suddenly taking an interest in the fair. I prefer the term potato delivery apparatus," said PW. "I call this particular model the exterminator." "The exterminator?" Principal Birdwhistle said with obvious concern. I believe the boy said exterminator, said the short round man. The correction only heightened the principal's agitation, which Lumpkin Sr. raised further still. Doesn't the school have rules about guns? He asked. The exterminator is not a gun, PW was quick to point out. It's not? Principal Birdwhistle said dubiously. No, said PW. Guns use gunpowder. All the exterminator requires is plain old hairspray. He pointed to a can of Aquanet. I'm not terribly convinced, said Principal Birdwhistle. Please reassure us that your terminator is not charged. Of course it isn't, said PW, and it's pronounced exterminator, he added patiently. Could you give us an overview of the apparatus? Mr. Sparks asked. Glad to, said PW. Let's start with the muzzle. See how I have added a beveled ring of plastic? That allows the user to slice down oversized potatoes, making for a nice snug fit. Not that potatoes are the only thing the exterminator can deliver. Go on, Mr. Sparks prompted. After I've filled the exterminator, PW continued, all I have to do is spray some aerosol into the ignition chamber and push this bright red button. Napoleon raised his hand. Tell us, Monsieur PW, what happens when the bright red button is pushed? PW smiled. Same thing that happens at the end of The Incredible Hulk, Volume 1, number 229. I'm not familiar with that work, said Principal Birdwhistle. Allow me to demonstrate. PW cupped his hands around his mouth and shouted, Kaboom! Principal Birdwhistle shook her head. Would you mind telling us the scientific value of this extirpator? Of course, said PW, resisting the urge to correct her once more. As we learned last year while studying the Crusades, ammunition is generally made of stone, wood, or metal. Slingshots fling rocks. Bows launch wooden arrows. Guns use powder to shoot bullets. The beauty of the exterminator is its versatility. Mr. Sparks provided another prompt. Can you explain? Absolutely, said PW. Basically, this apparatus will propel anything. Anything? Asked Lumpkin Sr. Anything, PW confirmed. Here, take a look. He turned to a poster board that included a data chart. Now I know where all those appetizers kept going, said Mr. Davanandana. I don't think your sister would be happy if she knew about item 2, added Miss Davanandana. I have another concern, said Mr. Sparks. The potato calculations at the bottom of your chart are not very precise. I know it, PW acknowledged, but the potatoes flew so wicked far they whizzed off the roof and down into the street. Are you saying you simply eyeballed the distance? Principal Birdwhistle asked critically. Of course not, said PW. I calculated the distance based on trajectory and triangulation. He pointed to a set of figures at the bottom of the poster board. Mr. Sparks double-checked the calculations on a piece of scratch paper. Well, said Principal Birdwhistle. The final number may not be precise, said Mr. Sparks, but the method he used to obtain it is flawless. Excellent work, PW.